Welcome, everybody, to the Enemy's Perspective, a UteNation podcast where today we're discussing the Utah Cal Poly matchup with ESPN Plus analyst for Cal Poly, John Kane. I'm your host, Matt Stanley. John, thanks for taking some time to talk ball with us today.
Matt, this is so awesome. I can't believe I'm on here with you guys, and it's going to be a lot of fun. And I can't wait to get into some of the stuff you guys want to know about the Mustangs. Let's go.
Hey, the pleasure's all ours. Again, thank you for your time. First off, congrats on starting out the season the way you did. A 41-17 win over San Diego. That's a real good win. What's the general feeling on Cal Poly football right now after week one?
Right. So you know the history of Poly. The last few years they've struggled. Starting off the season with a win like that, I don't care who it's against. It just creates optimism amongst everybody on the campus, right?
Absolutely.
Coach Wolf does a really good job. He's a very optimistic person, and now that's going to kind of go throughout the whole program. And I think that really helps. I mean, I being a coach myself, getting the first win, if you can get it in the first game, it's a big deal, because even if it doesn't go good in the second week, right, you're still 500, which is,
Yep.
I don't care what anybody says, it's a lot better than 0-2. So that's definitely a plus for them right now over in San Luis Obispo for sure.
So with that, under Coach Wolf, what's going to be the key ingredient for you guys to keep that momentum rolling throughout the season?
Right. So I've seen them up close and personal now for about 5 years, and I've always thought that they've struggled running the football. And this year, when I wasn't at the game, I turned down the game to watch them play San Diego, and it was the first time that I felt that the offensive line looked like offensive linemen, like they looked the part. Their feet were moving. They were getting their bodies on people. And Coach Wolf put a lot of time into the offseason on making sure that was going to happen. And college football, right, Matt? You've got to be able to run the football. If you have to throw the ball 60 times in a college football game, you're in big trouble.
Yep. Yeah. It always starts with the offensive line. And
100%.
I think with less people that know less about college football in general, or just football, the sport, don't quite appreciate how important that offensive line is. And even I think certain NFL franchises haven't quite figured that out. But you talked a little bit about last year. You're coming off of 3-8 seasons, but the optimism seems high for Cal Poly. So what reasons do you have? You already talked about the offensive line. What else do you have that brings up that optimism for you guys?
Well, I've been around those people, and their coaching staff is as good as any coaching staff in the country. And again, you take somebody like Coach Whittingham, who's been able to bring in, really high level talent for years. It makes him a good coach. I don't care how good of a coach you are. If you don't have the right personnel, you're not going to win. And Coach Wolf has put a lot of time and effort into developing his staff and then getting the right people personnel wise in there. I think this is the year where we're going to start to see that change, and the continuity with the staff, the same people, the same nomenclature, the same kind of set of goals and the way they run things in the offseason is going to start to permeate throughout the program. And of course, the transfers have helped. I mean, they've gotten some really good guys, and we're going to talk about Ty Diffenbach here in a minute. But I mean, that's makes a huge difference, no question.
Yeah, absolutely. That culture is what matters, and if you can get that culture set, sometimes it takes a few years, but once you get that culture set, players catch on, and it becomes a real asset to your team.
It does.
So, give me a quick breakdown of the Cal Poly Mustangs football. What individuals and squads, position groups? If you're Utah, who you got your eye on right now?
Well, you have to have your eye on Ty Diffenbach, right? I mean, he's a redshirt freshman last year at Pitt. He was one of the top quarterbacks in the country at ESPN 100 when he was playing at Agora here in California. He's the real deal. He's an all-state pitcher on the baseball team before he graduated. And you saw his numbers from last week. He's a real big-time quarterback. And we know the difference between FCS and FBS. Ty was at an FBS school. He's coming back and playing at an FCS school, and he's going to bring those guys around him up. And I think that whole offensive group is going to be something that they're going to have to really lean on. You're going to have drives, sustained drives, and be able to score. And again, I mentioned the offensive line, much better, looks good. Told you the way they move their feet, the way they got on blocks. And they have a couple good running backs. Zion Hall, he's back again. They've never really had big bruising backs there. They use that kind of H-back kind of philosophy, and they've done that for a while, and it seemed to work. And if they can spread it out a little bit and get the ball moving and create those running lanes with those linemen, I think you're going to see a lot of difference with the way that they score. And you said something earlier about, people that don't know football. Offense really does control the defense. If you can keep your defense off the field, you're helping the defense. The longer that offense stays on the field, the easier it is when the defense has to go back out there. Poly struggled with three and outs for years and putting the defense in bad positions. And now this year, hopefully that's going to change. Obviously on defense, they lost probably the best player that they've ever had on defense in Elijah Ponder, who's on the 53-man roster right now with the Patriots. He was the real deal. And he stayed there the whole time, and he was at times unblockable. I watched film on him from games, when they played Cal and other teams and they couldn't block him, which is why he's on the 53-man roster. So replacing him is not going to happen. They're going to have to find guys to sort of, piecemeal it together. But Josh Neloafe, he's back. He's really good. He's an interior defensive lineman, very quick, quick on his feet. And the other group I think that has struggled but looks good this year is the back end. The DBs, they were all young. I mean, 2 years ago, they were playing like 3 true freshmen back there. So think about that. They're playing in a high school game in December, and then in the next September, they're playing in a Division I college football game. That's a huge step for a defensive back. Just learning the coverages and how to, get off of man back into zone, and where are you going to be in this particular set, and what happens when they do this and this motion. It's not like high school. So those guys are all back, and it makes a big difference. I look for a lot from that secondary too.
Yeah, absolutely. That experience, and just again with that culture, just having those guys that are a part of that culture go from being the young guys playing to now they're the leaders of the team. That is huge. Yeah. So what's your expectations on how Cal Poly is going to come out and attack Utah offensively and defensively?
So let's be honest, right? I mean, we saw how Utah played against UCLA, right? And they're a very good football team. Coach Whittingham's been there for, I'm not going to guess how many years, but it's a long time.
We got to talk decades if we're going to talk that.
Decades, right? And Coach Wolf was at Washington State years ago. They know each other. There's no question about that. If it was me, and it's not, which is way easier sitting here and then trying to figure out what to do from up in the booth than it is on the sideline with the turf shoes on. I don't want to do that anymore. I would try to keep the ball away from them on offense. I mean, I would just do the best I can to run the ball, make the quarters go, keep it short. The issue with that is you have Diefenbach, who's a very good passer, and you're going to want him to throw the ball. But remember, and I say this all the time on the broadcast, every time that ball hits the ground, the clock stops. And when the clock stops, you extend the game. And when you're playing a team that can score like Utah, you're giving them more time to do that. So I'm sure we're going to talk to them probably in a couple of days. That's what they're thinking. I'm almost positive they are.
Yeah, so you're looking at clock management being one of the
100%,
keys to success 100%. There. Awesome.
Yeah, no question.
So you brought up Ty Diefenbach, and he looks to be a big reason why Cal Poly had a 40-point explosion in week 1. He had 263 yards passing and another 69 yards rushing. Mm-hmm. What can we expect to see from Diefenbach this Saturday?
So when you take a guy like that, even though he was a redshirt freshman at Pitt and didn't see any real time, he's a natural leader. They went and got him for a reason. And to be clear for your Utah fans, Cal Poly is an FCS school, but they're also a very competitive academic school. Yeah. So they're one of the few Cal schools where you have to be admitted to the school before you can be offered any kind of money to play. Okay. So to get a guy like Diefenbach, he's got to have the grades. So they can't just go in and just dig through the portal and take anybody. So that brings maturity, right? And it also brings some leadership. So, and I know coach is looking at that from him. He obviously won the position over some guys who have been there. So that says a lot about him. But I also think that being in a position to be able to handle the adversity that's coming, there's no reason why they haven't talked about that. They're not going to win every football game. I mean, let's just be honest about it, right? So there's going to be those bad days. And a guy like him is going to have to be the guy that the other players on the team look to for his leadership on how he reacts. I mean, he's literally the only person who will have the ball in his hands on every play other than the center. And that's a big deal.
Yeah. So talking about Diefenbach, he seems to have a favorite target that came out last week, Michael Briscoe. Tell us about Michael Briscoe.
Yeah, Michael is one of those guys that he's just a natural athlete. Like if you see him play basketball, you're not surprised that he's a really good football player. He's one of those guys. He was one of their better receivers last year. He has a knack for getting open, which people use these terms, and when we're on a broadcast and I'm talking to Chris, sometimes it gets a little bit like hyperbole. Everybody says the same thing, but it's true. He understands how to find open places, and quarterbacks want to see guys that don't have other colored jerseys standing around them. That's why you get the football. The more you can get yourself open, the better chance you have to get the ball. Briscoe is natural at that. They do have another guy that didn't play last week, Logan Boer. Same type of player. He was injured. He will play this week, I believe.
Okay.
But Briscoe is also one of those guys that's very athletic and makes athletic plays. And, when you recruit football players, most college football coaches recruit athletes that can play football.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So it seems like Cal Poly has a real emphasis on development, finding younger guys and developing. How do you think Briscoe's going to do? Do you think he can challenge our corners?
Yes, I do. I
Awesome.
think that, I think that, he throws a really good ball. I've seen some tape on him from the spring. I didn't get a chance to get up there, and then some of the fall stuff that they posted. He throws a really good ball. But again, you're comparing a little bit. I don't want to say it's apples and oranges, but it's bigger apples to smaller apples, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
When you're talking about an FBS corner playing against an FCS wide receiver. Now, can some of those FCS guys play FBS? 100% they can. But as a whole, it's the scheme, it's the whole thing that creates, and the depth that creates issues for teams playing up. But it does happen, and these guys can play at that level. There was a couple of years ago they went and played Stanford, and they hung with them for a half. You can do it. It's the sustainability over time. So can he challenge those guys? Absolutely, he can. Will he? Yes, he will. It's just what kind of decisions is he going to make when the windows are small? Right? Guys are going to close a little bit faster on Saturday than they did last Saturday. That's just the truth, right?
Yep, but
he's going to have to make good decisions.
Sounds like you have the guys that are willing to make that fight and step up to the moment.
Yeah, absolutely.
So put yourself in the mindset. If you have coaching experience, if you were a coach on the Cal Poly Mustangs, what Utah position group is keeping you up at night? Who are the guys, the position group that you're focused on?
After watching them play UCLA, I can tell you who's keeping me up at night. It's number 4. It's number 4 because he looked like Kyler Murray out there, and I don't know what you do. And I've been in those positions where I've played against guys like that, and you almost have to say, let's just hope that he doesn't do that on Saturday, and then you can fill that in with several different that's. He's very athletic. He throws a great ball, and he seems to just be very, very in command of what he's doing with the football. He did not look confused or out of sorts to me at all in that UCLA game. And I watched that game before I knew I was going to come on here with you guys. I happen to be a UCLA fan. Wasn't fun watching that game, and it wasn't fun watching him if you're a UCLA fan. But yeah, him. And then always, Coach Whittingham does a great job with his defensive line. I've always thought that that's been what they hinge everything on. And, those 1 and 3 techniques that he uses in that front are pretty good players. So if I'm an offensive coordinator at Cal Poly, I'm going to worry about those guys a lot because they can not only stop the run, but they're athletic and they can put pressure on the passer.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up Devin Napier. Utah's lucky to have got him through that transfer portal. He's definitely the guy that even if you do everything right, he can find a way to make somebody wrong. So he's definitely something you got to focus on if you're Cal Poly. So, but that aside, FCS teams will occasionally shock an FBS team. It happens. We saw it just last week with Kansas State and North Dakota. So what's the key to Cal Poly being that team that can shock an FBS team?
So, I don't think it's any secret, right? So you actually mentioned it earlier. It's going to be clock management and ball control. You just can't turn it over. And when people make these statements, again, we just said this a minute ago, when we say can't, that's can't with the capital C. If you turn the ball over, you're going to be in big trouble. And you have to be able to limit penalties and keep that offense and number 4 on the sidelines. The longer he has the ball, the more chances they're going to have to score. And for the reasons you just said, they're going to have everybody in their pass rush lanes, right? Cal Poly is going to do it just right. They're going to have everybody right where they should be. And he's that kind of guy that can make that one little move and get underneath somebody. And before you know it, now he's 30 yards down the field. And those chunks, they call them explosives now. That's what the coaches use. Chunk plays, explosives. Those things are absolute daggers when you're trying to pull an upset against a team that has a little bit better talent and at a different level. So those would be the things, obviously. I mean, it's not a secret. The longer they can go with that, and I think that would be the other thing, the longer that goes with a close score and you give the team like Poly a chance, the more anxiety that creates for the team that shouldn't be in that position, which in this case would be Utah. They don't want to look at the score in the fourth quarter and have it be 7-3.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Now you're going, well, wait a minute. Now we're at home and that's when people start looking at each other, fingers start getting pointed, people start to panic. So Poly wants Utah panicking. Utah doesn't want to have to panic, if that makes sense. I mean, nope. that's kind of the direction you have to go.
Okay. So now let's flip the script a little bit. Put yourself in the mindset of the offensive coaching staff. If you're drawing up the Utah's game plan, what are your targets? What is your game plan to attack Cal Poly?
So in the past, Poly, and again, they got a lot of film, they've struggled with stopping the run sometimes. And it looked to me like Utah did a very good job of running the football. I like their scheme. Again, not to get too technical, but when you have a guy like Dampier who can run the ball off of the RPO, he is another running back. A lot of teams use the RPO and the quarterback is never going to run the ball. So teams figure that out, right? They look at their tendencies and they figure that out. This week, they're going to have to put somebody responsible for him. So if I'm coaching Utah, I'm telling my offensive coordinator, you've got to make sure that he's a threat on every single time we run the ball, because with him being a threat, that creates issues for fits on defense where guys go, because most defenses don't account for the quarterback as a runner. They do a little bit more now because of the RPO, if that makes sense. But he's a different type of kid. So the 2-yard gain for a quarterback that's just an RPO kind of guy becomes a 10-yard gain for somebody like him. So if I'm Utah, I'm going to exploit what my strengths are, and that's him and that offensive line, which by the way is massive. They put the comparison up there on Saturday. I was like, oh my God, this guy an NFL offensive line. These guys are massive.
Yeah,
and,
at least
they move. Yeah, well, but that averages out, right? You stay put those guys that are 330 and 335 in there. It makes everybody else look big till they all wearing that same uniform. Yeah, that's how I would do it. I would want to run the ball, obviously.
Awesome. So who else do you have that we haven't talked about, we haven't covered yet? Any players or position groups that you want to talk about that just deserve that spotlight from Cal Poly right now?
Well, I think D'Amato did a really good job at linebacker. He's new. I think, obviously, Ty is the guy that they're going to kind of, rest on a little bit. Josh Nolawafe on defense. Zion Hall, we talked about him. But again, when you're coming into a season where you've got a bunch of transfers, you've sort of revamped your roster. I don't think that it's fair to say, let's hope we get this out of this guy. I mean, I think they were thinking that with Ty when they brought him in, but you don't put him in that position. You don't bring him in and hand him the keys to the car. You bring him in and you let him drive it around for a while and see if he's okay with it, make sure he doesn't run into anything. And I think that's what they've done. But as a group and as a program, like you said, I think they're going in the right direction. Obviously, this is going to be a tough game for them, but in order to get better, you're going to have to play better people. The Big Sky, and I don't know how much research you've done, but the Big Sky might be the best FCS conference in the country. If it's not, then they're tied for first. I mean, you got Montana, Montana State, Idaho. You got some, Sac State. You got some powerhouse teams in that conference that Poly's going to have to play that are not that much further below Utah. Now, what do we know about Utah? We don't know yet. They're 25. Where could they be in a month from now? They might be 10. I mean, they look pretty good. But what made them look good on Saturday, right? Was it all Utah, or was it a combination of Utah being really good and UCLA maybe not being as good as people thought they might be? It's hard to tell.
We'll find out in the next couple of weeks because UCLA plays some Mountain West teams.
Yeah, they do.
They got UNLV coming up.
Yep, Friday.
So you talked a little bit earlier about the transfer portal benefiting you. Do you think as an FCS team, the transfer has made it harder to keep on to your most talented athletes because they want to move into an FBS school or somewhere else?
I've thought about this a lot because one of the questions that I asked Coach Wolf last year off the record, and I won't tell you what he told me, is at the end of the year, how hard is it to coach a bunch of guys, looking at them? So I'm the coach and I'm looking out there and I got, 65, 70 guys on scholarship and then another 20 or so guys as walk-ons. Which one of those guys in that little group that I'm looking at is already decided that they're leaving? How hard is it to coach like that? Like, are they just done with wherever they are and they're going to move on? How do you build a program and continuity? And I think that the portal, the way that they run it right now, has created this like sort of disconjointed sort of way of running a program. You kind of have to coach today, right? And that's it.
Yeah.
You can't worry about tomorrow because tomorrow might be a whole different, not literally, but in the figurative sense, tomorrow might be a whole different set of guys. North Carolina is a perfect example, right? They had 70 guys on their roster they didn't have last year. I mean, how do you even do that? And some of those guys, like you just said, were FCS players that had really good seasons and went, you know what? I'm going to go somewhere else. And the way that it's set up right now, you can't blame them.
Yeah.
I mean, they're going and getting money, right? Somebody came to me right now and offered me a whole heck of a lot more money than what I was doing. I think, you have to consider it, right? It's human nature.
Yeah, there's definitely unique challenges to what's essentially an unlimited free agency every year with college football. And I think a lot of football fans feel both the pros and the pains of that.
I agree.
So,
I
yeah,
think they do. It's like anything else. I always used to say this when I coached: winning solves every problem you have.
absolutely every time.
So when you're winning, it doesn't matter how the portal went, right? People are, that's great. Yeah, let's keep doing that. You start losing and things start going sideways, people start looking for people to blame. That's going to be one of the things. Well, we don't have any continuity. We got all these new guys and this guy doesn't fit in. And that wasn't the guy we wanted. And that's what happens. So if you're lucky enough to win with portal guys, then, look at Deion Sanders his first year. He couldn't do anything.
John, you're absolutely right with the transfer portal. When you're winning, you love it. So do you have a prediction for us for how this game go for you?
That's not going to happen.
All right. Sounds good.
And this is why I don't do that. During the game. So I'm just going to be honest with you. Well, first of all, it was fun answering those questions and being able to talk a little bit about Poly was awesome. During the game, during the broadcast, one of the things I love to do is predict what's going to happen during the game. Right. And it's like anything else. Did you ever bet horses?
Nope. No.
Okay. So people that bet horses, they'll tell you about the one that they got right. So I was at the track this horse was 20-1 and I bet him and he won and they're all excited, right? Didn't tell you about the other 35 times. Didn't even hit the board, right? I like to do that. Okay, here we go. This is time for an interception. When it happens, I look like a genius, right? When it doesn't, people forget that I even said it. So the problem with the scores is that doesn't go away. So if I say Utah is going to get this many points and Cal Poly is going to get this many points, I'm going to have to wear that. So I'm not going to do that. I am going to say this. I'm going to tell you that I think, based on what I've seen, that Poly is going to give Utah more of a game than people from Utah are going to expect. So when you guys are watching the game, all Utah fans, remember Coach Kane said, going to give them a game. It's going to be a lot more of a game than the Ute fans expect going into the game, because just on paper, it shouldn't be, if that's fair.
Yeah,
but I think Poly is ready. I think going up to Utah and playing in this stadium, in this environment, is something that these kids want to do. And Utah's maybe looking past them a little bit. It's, again, these are all these colloquialisms that people use, but how do you not look past Cal Poly? I mean, how do you not do that, right? I mean, they're kids.
I think it's easier for spectators to do. Utah's coaching staff are not the type of people that you'd look at and think that they're going to look past an opponent.
No, they won't. They won't.
But love to hear that the athletes are looking forward to it. They want to be here. They want to be doing this. And after this game, I hope they have a great season. You know, so
I think they will. I think it's going to turn around. I'm really looking forward to it.
So, John, thank you so much for coming on. You've been great telling us about Cal Poly, who they are, what athletes they got. Thank you so much. Is there anything else you want to throw out before you head out for the night?
No, I'm looking for. I wish I was making the trip. I will say this, and this is for everybody in Utah. We went to Yellowstone, my family and I, over spring break, and we stopped at the University of Utah. My son is 16, John, same name as me. And we took a little tour of the campus. You guys should be proud of that place. It's beautiful. And we were really impressed by it. It was just very, very well put together. Stadium was great. We enjoyed the visit. So I wish I could be there. I wish I could be there to watch it, but I'm getting ready for next week when Western Oregon comes into San Luis Obispo. I appreciate it, Matt. Best of luck to all the Utah fans and the coaching staff. And Coach Whittingham does a great job. And we'll be watching with one eye on the TV to see if I was right about how long this is going to last for the Mustangs. Thank you.
Thank you so much to everybody for listening today. Please like and subscribe and stay tuned for more UteNation podcasts and coverage.